Hi guys, welcome to Bible Breakdown. We're doing 2 Samuel chapter 13. Okay, so this chapter actually talks about grape without the G, but we're going to say grape because I'm not trying to get in trouble. Okay, so here we get introduced to David's kids, and there's 3 kids, 2 sons named Absalom and Amnon, and then his daughter named Tamar. So Amnon actually has a crush on his sister Tamar, and verse 2 says, Amnon was frustrated to the point of making himself sick over his sister Tamar because she was a virgin, but it seemed impossible to do anything to her. So David's brother's son, which is Amnon's cousin, his name is Jonadab. He goes up to Amnon and he's like, what's going on? Why do you look like this? He tells him that he looks very miserable every morning. And Amnon, he tells him that he's in love with Tamar. Now, they mention that Jonadab is a very screwed person. And in verse 5, it says, Jonadab says to him, lie down on your bed and pretend you're sick. When your father comes to see you, say to him, please let my sister Tamar come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare a meal in my presence so I can watch and eat from her hand. So Jonadab, he's giving him advice to try and get Tamar into his room. So Amnon, he does what Jonadab tells him, and he lays down, he acts like he's sick. His father comes, he tells his father he wants Tamar to come in and basically care for him. But specifically, he says to make a couple cakes in his presence so that he can eat from her hand. So David sends a letter to Tamar, and he says, please go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare a meal for him. So Tamar, she does just that. She bakes the cake and she brings it to Amnon's room. But then he decides not to eat and he tells everybody to get out except Tamar. So everybody leaves and he says to Tamar, bring the meal to your bedroom so I can eat from your hand. So Tamar, she does what he asked. Then verse 11 says, when she brought them to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, come sleep with me, my sister. Then Tamar, she's fighting against him and she's like, no, don't do this. This is a disgrace to the people of Israel. Like, you will be looked at as a fool. What would people think of me? What would people think of you? And so on and so forth. Then she tries to reason with him and she tries to give him advice to kind of make this not as bad as it seems. She tells him, please speak to the king, for he won't keep me from you. So she wants him to go to their father and to basically ask him if it's okay if they can be together. Then verse 14 says, but he refused to listen to her, and because he was stronger than she was, he disgraced her by raping her. So after all this happened, Amnon actually hated Tamar. He hated her more than he loved her. And he was like, get out of my face. You need to leave. And she says to him in verse 16, no, she cried, sending me away is much worse than the great wrong you've already done to me. But Amnon, he was not trying to hear that. So he calls one of his servants that was serving him and he was like, get this girl out of here and lock the door behind you. So the servant got her out and he locked the door. Then it says, now Tamar was wearing a long-sleeved robe because this is what the king's virgin daughters wore. Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the long-sleeved robe she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away crying out. So her other brother Absalom sees her and says, has your brother Amnon been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart. So Amnon, she lived with her brother and was just like low-key under the radar. Now, David was informed of what happened between his 2 kids, and he was furious. And then Absalom, he did not speak to his brother because he was also very mad. He hated his brother for what he did to their sister. And then it says, 2 years later, Absalom's sheep shearers were at Baal Hazor near Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. So he sends word to his father, and he's like, will my father and all his servants come to my house? And David's like, no, we're not coming, but I will bless you. The main reason why David didn't want to go is because he didn't want to be a burden. And Absalom, he did try to urge David to go, but he still didn't want to. So that's why he blessed him instead. So instead, Absalom asked David if Amnon can go. And David's like, why do you want him to go? And Absalom, it says, but Absalom urged him, so he sent Amnon and all the king's sons. So Absalom actually had a plan to kill his brother. And he tells the young men, he's like, I'm going to give you guys a cue. When Amnon is drunk off wine and happy and in good spirits, I'm going to tell you guys to go kill him. Then he tells him, don't be afraid. Am I the one who has commanded you? Be strong and valiant. So the time came and Absalom gave his signal to his young men, and they all killed Amnon. And then they sent a message to David saying that all the king's sons have died and none of them survived. Verse 31 says, in response, the king stood up, tore his clothes, and laid down on the ground, and all his servants stood by with their clothes torn. So as we know, all the king's sons did not die, and the person that informed David of this was actually his nephew, Jonadab. He tells David, he's like, I hope you don't think all your sons have died, because it's only Amnon that died, and Absalom had this plan since the day all that happened. So Absalom flees, and the people that were out to watch says that they saw many people coming west from the mountain. So Jonadab says, look, the king's sons have come. It is exactly like your servant said. So all the king's sons, except Absalom because he fled, they all come and they're all crying. So David and his servants, they were all crying, and it says that Absalom went to a place called Geshur. So David was mourning for his son every day, and it says that Absalom was in Geshur for 3 years. And then the last line says, King David longed to go to Absalom, for David had finished grieving over Amnon's death. And that is the end of chapter 13. That's all I have for y'all. I love y'all. God loves y'all more. Have a great day.